Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast giving America hope since 2018. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of the New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. From attorneys generals, to state senators, to mayors, to school board members, these are the people that are pushing policies and politics that will respond to climate change, rebuild our economy, address racial injustice, and restore our democracy. These are incredibly talented people who have dedicated themselves to public service when their country and their communities needed it the most. Check out newdealleaders.org to see what I'm talking about.
Welcome to An Honorable Profession. I'm Debbie Cox Bultan, CEO of the New Deal, where we're proud to support some of the amazing leaders you hear on this podcast. In this episode, I speak with California legislator Blanca Rubio, who chairs the New Democrats in the state assembly. Blanca talks about her highlights from the most recent legislative session, why it's so important to support business as we recover from the pandemic, and what it's like being one half of the first ever sister duo serving together in the California legislature. Blanca also talks about her own incredible and inspiring path into public service, having been undocumented and deported with her family when she was a child, and why she works so hard to give a voice to her constituents. Well, Assemblywoman Blanca Rubio, welcome to An Honorable Profession.
Thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm good. It's so nice to see you. And I've been so excited to speak to a fellow Californian. Talk to people all over the country, but it's fun to talk to somebody from my own home state. We are talking about 6 weeks after the end of the legislative session here. And just wondering, I know you had some success with bills. It was a weird time, of course. We had the recall hanging over everything. But tell me how you felt about the legislative session and maybe anything in particular that you were so proud to get past this time around.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you today, my fellow Californian. It is quite a different world this year than last year, obviously, and the year before. This pandemic has really done a number on everyone, but we've been trekking along, trying to figure it out and trying to do the best that we can for our communities. One of the great things about what happened was, I think people are a little bit more grounded. We all kept looking around thinking, is God trying to tell us something? And so I think we were a little bit more connected, kind of with our own immediate families, but the problem was that we weren't being seen or being out in the community and really talking to people about what their needs are. But, it is what it is at this point. All we can do is, for us, hope for the best, overall, but as a public official, try to do everything that I can to make sure that people are receiving services that they need and, really the basics, roof over their head, food on their table, and education for their kids. I have a 14 and 13-year-old that were homeschooled, and by trade, I am a teacher, and I did not understand homeschooling parents when I was teaching. I understand them less now because even though I'm trained, I was ready to kill the kids a couple of times, and it wasn't a good scenario for either of us. But I think it helped me really understand what folks are going through on a day-to-day basis. The challenges, I'm lucky enough to be able to stay home and do work from home, and a lot of our community members were not. So it was 2020 was terrible. 2021 we were happy to receive, and now it's on its way out again. And I don't think very much changed, to be honest with you. I think the differences between our class system was more evident in 2020, and 2021 hasn't really been much better for folks. So in the legislature, we were trying to at least offer some safety net programs for folks to just get through. The great thing about us not being out in full force, I believe, was we were limited to 12 bills each, which is really, I didn't really understand until now how exhausting it is to be running around hearing bills. Just to put it into perspective, in the assembly, we're allowed up to 50 bills per year. And this year we were limited to 12, which was a big difference. I think at last night of session, we were done at 9 p.m. and people are looking around going, what's going on? This is weird, because we were done and people are done speaking and we're looking around like, wait, it's only 9 p.m. It's time for us to, get into a big old fight or something. And it really didn't happen. And so I think that was one of the good things about the legislative year this time, was that we were asked to choose the best of what we were trying to accomplish. And unfortunately, some bills were not looked at. And I think we have a tendency when we're asked to limit to a certain amount, if they ask us for 50, we're going to do 50. If you ask us for 20, we're going to do 20. And so this time around with 12 was really different because we had to be really particular about what we were going to introduce. I usually do a lot of foster children bills. I did a couple of those that I'm really proud of. We do a lot of work with the aging community. We had a bill about that. And so for me, it was just trying to focus on what really was important for us this year. One of my successes, and I'm going to brag about it a little bit, was I sit on Sub 1, which is the Health and Human Services subcommittee for the state budget. And a few years ago, we started doing work on making food a prescription. We didn't call it that, but that was kind of the vision, is to make food a prescription. And so we partnered up, did a 3-year pilot program and tracked congestive heart failure patients. The statistics were that 1 in 3 patients were rehospitalized within 30 days if they just let them loose without any kind of prescription. Medical prescription, yes, but I mean, food, for example, that was medically tailored for their ailment. And so we started I partnered up with some organizations, and they did a 3-year pilot program following these congestive heart failure patients. In 3 years, we took them from 1 in 3 being rehospitalized to 1 in 20 being rehospitalized. You know, my goal for my entire career, which is a 12-year term, was to finally get that passed. And I was so excited to see that the governor put it in the budget this year. So food is a prescription for some folks. And, you know, if you think about long-term effects, that's a huge savings to our Medi-Cal system. But in the short term, people are food insecure right now as it is because of the pandemic. And, you know, we have high occurrences of diabetes, congestive heart failure, heart problems in general. And it's really prevalent in those communities that are low income because they don't have money to buy, you know, our kale salad at Whole Foods that is, you know, $7. And so that's always been a barrier for folks. And now that the governor put that provision in the budget, now they're able to access medically tailored foods for their particular ailment, but more than that, for our communities that are food insecure, that serves as their security, that they're going to get the 3 meals per day as needed. So that was a big win. And it's not hashtagable. I talk about that because my colleagues I call it the hashtag mentality. It's really cool to put that hashtag up there, but what I just told you is not hashtagable, but I think it's the biggest success for me. It was my goal in my 12-year term that I was, that I'm supposed to be here or hopefully get elected every 2 years, but we did it in 5 years. And so for me, it's a big win. Again, not hashtagable because I can't tell you in 2 words what we did, but it's the biggest, I think for me, the biggest win of my career so far, because I think that people are going to benefit from this. Again, not just for their medical issues, but I think for those folks that are food insecure, now they're guaranteed 3 meals a day because now it's part of a Medi-Cal program that helps them get through their ailments.
That's so amazing. Why was that such a priority for you going into the legislature? Why was this something that you focused on so much?
Well, and we'll talk about my story later, but I'm an immigrant. I came from Mexico when I was 6 years old. My family was deported. We came back to California, and the neighborhood that I grew up in, you know, being deported and undocumented is synonymous with being poor. That's the reason we left our own country, was because there was nothing for us there. And we came to the United States for a better life. And for me, growing up in downtown LA, it's the Pico Union District of LA, which is by far the most dangerous and probably poorest of LA County. I saw a lot of, you know, just tragic situations, not just with gangs, but, you know, just poverty in itself. And I feel like the legislature has offered me an opportunity to save me, right? You know, people like me, people like my parents. My dad is 81. He has been in and out of the country since he was 19 because they were just trying to make a life for us. We've been consistently in the United States now for 44 years, but that stigma, and for my father, that wanting to do better has always been part of it. My mom was a housekeeper up until the pandemic, cleaned people's houses. And so for us, we were blessed enough to have both parents. They worked really hard to make sure that there was always food on the table, but my neighbors, my friends were not as lucky as we were. And so the legislature, again, has afforded me an opportunity to save folks like me, folks like my parents, to really hopefully get them out of that situation that they're in and really take advantage of the American dream and be able to be in the United States and in California in particular, and really do something with our lives, because we left our own country so that we can be better here.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. Congratulations. That seems like a huge victory for you. And it is so important for so many people. I mean, you talked about some of the gaps, that were exacerbated over the pandemic, and just thinking about as we can figure out how we're going to build back better here in California and across the country. Besides healthcare, you mentioned education gaps. I also had kids at home, teenagers at home during the pandemic. I'm so happy they're back in school.
Yes.
An unplanned experiment that the teachers were heroic, but it was rough, I think, for everybody. What else do you put on the top of the list as things you're going to be looking for as we come out of the pandemic and try to build back, not back to the old normal where those gaps existed, but to a new normal where we can help more people and invest in more people? What's top of your list in California?
I'm a moderate Democrat, and I have to tell you that, sitting on these committees on Sub 1, for example, has given me the opportunity to help, with the safety net programs. But I also have to be really cognizant about the fact that businesses are suffering. Without our businesses, we don't have the surplus budget that we had this year. And I think sometimes it's lost kind of in the translation, because people assume that, it's a business, therefore you must be rich. And it's not the case. In my area, I have about 26,000 small businesses. I'm in LA County, but not LA. And I always do the air quotes to make a point that LA is not the same across the county. And in my area, in the San Gabriel Valley, we have our dependencies on those small businesses. I represent 11 cities. I think it's 12 school districts, and the school districts get their funding from the government or from the California budget. However, the incidentals, for example, the booster clubs, depend on the small businesses to be able to support. In my area, we have a lot of kids that go to college based on grants that they get or scholarships. Well, those scholarships are usually tied to the extracurricular activities that they've done in high school. Band, for example, football, baseball, all of those programs that are literally supported by those small businesses. How many times have you gone to a Little League game and it says, $3.99 pizza is a proud sponsor of, so all of those small businesses help support those programs that the schools itself are getting the funding from the state, but those different programs are funded through small businesses, through the booster clubs, all the moms and dads that do all of the fundraising for those programs. And we completely lost that during the pandemic. And, it's a gap, not only educationally, but now funding wise. What are those kids that were depending on that scholarship, that football scholarship or that band scholarship going to do that we've been closed for almost 2 years, and they haven't had the opportunity to really go out and compete for those scholarships. So small businesses are the heart of my district, and being able to support them and bring them back better, I think is what is important. And I think it's not just in California, but it's a national trend that folks are looking for workers. I was driving by yesterday and I saw a billboard. It said Amazon, right? Love them or hate them. Amazon is up there and it says $3,000 bonus and hourly wages of $22 per hour. The opportunities are out there right now. Everybody's giving incentives to sign up, higher wages to start working there. I joke because we didn't have that when I was a kid. I said, if I didn't have a job right now, I would have 3, because I'd be signing up for all those bonuses and I'd be working at, for $22 an hour. I've been working for a long time. I think my starting wage was $3.10 an hour, right? If I didn't have a job, I'd have 3 of them right now. I'd be taking advantage of the incentives. Well, those are great for the bigger companies. My little small businesses don't have the ability to give you those incentives and to pay, the high wages. They're doing better, obviously. But if I don't support the small businesses, my local high schools are suffering, my local little leagues, the cities depend on those small businesses for their coffers every single year. And, we can do, hopefully the Build Back Better plan will give them more funds, to all the local cities. But how are they going to sustain that? The only way they can sustain that is by having a healthy business community that is contributing to the local tax base, and for us here in Sacramento, contributing to our state budget, so that I can support that medically tailored meal program that I'm so proud of, because it's all paid for by taxes, from local taxes, from business taxes, and from personal taxes. And so building better means a lot of different things to different people. But for me, because of my district, I want to make sure that those businesses are supported. As long as they're healthy, my cities and my school districts are going to be healthy, and the state is going to be healthy.
Are there specific things that you're either thinking about from the state budget, or as you get this infusion of cash, hopefully from the federal government, either through the American Rescue Plan dollars or hopefully what's coming through the infrastructure bill and other things? Are there specific things that you're hearing from your small businesses that they need in particular to be able to grow in the future?
Technology is always going to be an issue. That. I think that's the wave of the future, right? So technology, a lot of our small businesses are not able to invest in, technology. I saw a program yesterday. I was reading an article about a new technology company called Toast. It's supposed to be for restaurants, and it has payroll built into their program. So a small restaurant, for example, can do their billing, their ordering, and even their payroll through this one system. It sounded great. I used to be in the restaurant industry once upon a time. I worked at McDonald's. And so I know how critical that is. And I worked in human resources as well. And I know how difficult it is to have to hire a payroll company and then do, some attorney to help you with your workers' compensation. And so having everything in one place, I think, will help our small businesses. The technology infrastructure is one, absolutely, but also training. We need to train people for the jobs that we don't know exist. I was a teacher, I told you, for about 16 years, and I taught kindergarten for 3 years, and we would go to a conference every year, and the conference was consistent in always telling us that the jobs that kindergarten students are going to do in 20 years have not been invented yet. How do we prepare, as a society, as an educational institution, how do we prepare for those jobs? And for our small businesses, how do they prepare in that evolution? Because, quite frankly, part of the article also talked about how some of the wait staff is going to be obsolete because now we're using those QR codes to order and to pay. Well, not only do we have to prepare that business for that, but we also have to prepare those folks that are going to be losing their jobs to be able to compete in this new digital world. So it's twofold: training, obviously the technology infrastructure, but also training those staff members that they are hiring to be able to evolve to whatever it is that we're going to be in 10, 15, 20 years. And so mainly that, but I think they're looking for training dollars. They're looking for innovative dollars because they also understand that the way we've been doing business is not going to work anymore. And so how do we prepare those small businesses to grow, but how do we prepare the workers to be able to be technologically savvy or trained well enough to be able to participate in the coming, evolution of jobs. So that's a big deal.
There's a lot there. There are a lot of needs there. I think that's fantastic. I want to ask you about, you mentioned the fact that you work closely with businesses, both in your district in general. I know you're chair of the New Democrats in the Assembly. Tell listeners who wouldn't know what that is, what that group is about and what you guys are trying to do.
Well, for the listeners, let me tell you, there is a moderate group left in California. There's a few of us left in California. When I say moderate Democrats, people are like, what? There's such a thing in California? There is. There's a moderate group of folks of Democrats in California that I am the convener of now. For me and for my group is being able to see the differences between being able to help those folks with the safety net programs that we just talked about, but also being able to help the businesses. Because let me tell you, folks, not every everybody or every business in California is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. That is the assumption because we have Silicon Valley, we have all of those technology companies that are thriving in California and in the United States and the world that are from California, but not everybody really is benefiting from that. And so for me to be able to support our small businesses, I just talked about how I have 26,000 small businesses in my communities. Well, guess what? A lot of folks, 80 assembly members and 40 senators have those same businesses in their communities. And so we need to be able to be moderate in the sense of, not all of the businesses are Elon Musk's businesses. And the controversy that happens with Elon Musk and with Jeff Bezos, as much as people want to really vilify them, they did something that none of us could do, is they reinvent themselves on a consistent basis. And, if we want to take any lessons from them, it's the reinventing part that I think a lot of our business community doesn't have the ability to do, first and foremost, because they don't have, obviously the dollars that they have, but those businesses are the bread and butter of my community. And so the moderate Dems are the group that are trying to bring some moderation to the bills that are coming through in Sacramento. I joke, and, with all due respect, some of my colleagues are trying to out-left each other, and some of them are trying to outright each other. We have the extreme right that's trying to do the whole President Trump rhetoric, and then we have some of my members that are trying to out-left each other. And not everybody in California has the ability to support my next door neighbor, for example. There was a bill and I understand why they're doing it, so please take this for what it is. There was a bill, you could take a leave of absence if your neighbor was sick so that you can take care of your neighbor. Now, think about that. I am on board with family leave. My goodness, Taylor, my legislative director, just got back from, what was it, Taylor, 8 weeks of bonding with his brand new baby. And it was amazing. And I'm sure that it was great for him, but it was his own baby. But how do you put a bill up that's going to give you family, or you can't call it family leave, give you leave because your neighbor is sick? And I was really confused about that. I still don't understand what the intent was, but that's a little bit extreme in my opinion. Giving Taylor, my legislative director, the ability to have 8 weeks off so he can bond with his baby, that is amazing for me, because that is his own child. He's going to raise that child. And, and so those are the types of issues that sometimes you stop and go, let us think about that for a minute. And some of my colleagues are trying to out-left each other. And I think I shared with you earlier, it's a hashtag mentality. They want to see who gets the best hashtag as opposed to who gets the best policy in place. And the beauty of term limits in California, if you're listening from another place, in California, the term limits used to be 6 years, you could be in the assembly, and 8 years in the Senate for a combination of 14 years. So I could be in the assembly, run for Senate, and spend 8 years as a senator for a total of 14 years. The voters changed that a few years ago. Actually, it's going to be, I think, 10 years ago, where now you can spend 12 years in the legislature, but you can be 12 years in the assembly, 12 years in the Senate, or a combination thereof. They shortened the term to 12, but now I'm an assembly member. I'm the first in my district to be in that 12-year term. I can spend 12 years in my seat. The beauty of that is when you were in office for 6 years, you can write all of the policies you wanted, but by the time they were implemented or any of the side effects, good or bad, you were already out of office. So you couldn't be held accountable for that bill. You'd be like, oh, done it. It was done 6 years ago. I moved on to something different. Now, with the 12-year term, guess what? If that policy doesn't work, it's going to come back and bite you during your own term. And now you have to answer for that. And so now we're seeing a lot of cleanup bills is what if you really pay attention, there's a lot of cleanup bills that are happening in the legislature because now they figured out, it didn't work and it as intended, or it's not going to work as intended. So now we're trying to clean up those bills. And so for the moderate Dems, we're trying to make sure that we inject that long-term thinking into our colleagues' bills and be like, it sounds great, in the short term, but in the long term, this is what may happen. And so that's, I think, my job. And it's been really, really fun to be able to do that, because now I have a lot of past bill experience to draw from and be like, hey, do you remember that bill once upon a time? Now I have actual institutional knowledge that I will carry with me for the next 7 more years that I have in my term. And so I'm able to say, hey, we tried that 5-6 years ago and it didn't work. And let me tell you why it didn't work. And this is what happened. And so having that institutional knowledge back helps. But again, for me as a moderate Democrat, it gives me the opportunity to pull from the bad stuff that we did and say, if it was that great, why are we doing cleanup on that bill? And so the mods are the very small group, but we are trying to be the conscience of the legislature and trying to make sure that the deals that are cut are long-term good ones for our communities, not just hashtagable feel-good policies that are going to, eventually fail.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think people will be interested in that kind of unintended consequence of term limits, right? That lack of institutional knowledge, the lack of accountability. I think that's a super interesting point people might not be aware of. The other thing I wanted to make sure I got to just on the legislative side, again, I'm a Californian, so I it makes sense to me, but I was so surprised when I start doing national politics, how big, relatively speaking, the districts are here in our state, right? So as you well know, you represent, close to 500,000 people. The next biggest state house in the country is Texas, and those are only less than 200,000 people they represent. And the smallest one in New Hampshire, they represent almost nearly 3,000 people. So you are in such a different ball game as a legislator in the state assembly here, representing so many people. So how do you think about your ability to stay connected with? I mean, obviously, I've been hearing you talk about the needs of your constituents. You clearly are connected, but how do you think about legislating when you have to stay connected with and represent so many people in your district?
Well, first and foremost is being visible. And, one of the things that I can tell you I'm really proud of, I have the reputation of being one of, if not the hardest working legislator in the state capitol. I have 2 kids. I have a 14 and 13-year-old at home that I still have to try and manage. But so you well know, and those of you that are parents, Taylor is on the call with us, is you have to get your stuff done before or after the kids. And so I've been trained by my children, and I was a teacher, so I've been trained by all of my children that if you want something done, you got to give it to a busy person. And so for me, it's really important to stay connected. But I have to also add to that I represent Republicans and Democrats, and I have made it a point to be the representative for everybody. And so I spend a lot, as much time as I do in my Democratic cities or my Democratic areas that I do in my Republican cities, because I think it's important for them to also be represented. I think my first 2 years, I went to the city of Glendora is one of the cities I represent, to their council meeting. And they're looking at me, they're staring at me. And I was like, what? Do I have something on my face? Like, what's going on? And they're like, Assembly member, we haven't had anybody visit us in 18 years. They hadn't had a representative go to their city council in 18 years because they're not, my district is 65% Democratic. So until I want to, if I keep doing a good job, I will keep getting reelected. And there's really no viable candidate because it is such a Democratic area. And so for them to be shocked that I was there was like, wow, that gave me a little perspective other than the the Democrat perspective, that all of the folks matter. And so I made it a point to visit, even in my Veterans Day is coming up. I'm going to go to one of the Republican cities and one of the Democratic cities. And, during Christmas, we have all these parades. So I go to one of the Democratic cities parades, and I go to the Republican parade because it's important for them to see a person that represents them. But because I am also business friendly, I do a lot of chamber events. I do a lot of, in my area, it's called the San Gabriel Valley Economic Partnership, which is kind of like a chamber, but it's a lot of the business community that participates. I do a lot of that. I went to Azusa Pacific University, which is in my district. And so I try to do events there a lot. I do the commencement speech. whatever it is that they need. I meet on a regular basis. I have what I call roundtables. I meet with the city managers for all the cities, the mayors. I meet with the superintendents, and in this case, with the presidents of the universities. There's only a few of them, but I like to have breakfast with them or coffee just to catch up. And I go on site to visits. So I try to do a lot of that. And the way we split it up in Sacramento is I call it, we do our legislative business Monday through Thursday. Our constituents really, to be honest with you, don't care what we're doing Monday through Thursday. They care only if it's affecting them, right? But other than that, they have no idea what I'm doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we fly home on Thursday night, and we spend time on Friday, Saturday, Sunday doing the events with the community. And they're really, really surprised that I'm that active, and they actually know me by first name. And I try to be accessible. I mean, obviously I can't give all 500,000 constituents my cell phone number, but my staff the staff is amazing. They're amazing. They go out and are connected with the community. Thanksgiving is coming up. Last year, on a regular basis, I try to do a turkey giveaway. It had been somewhere about 400 to 500 turkeys that we would give away. So naturally, with the pandemic happening last year, I was like, okay, we're going to plan for 1,500. We ended up giving away 2,700 turkeys. It was crazy where God knew, only God knows where we were able to get the 2,700 turkeys. Now, there weren't actual turkeys because that would be too much, but we were scrambling, running around, getting gift cards for folks so that they can pick up a turkey. We partnered with the local food bank so that folks not only got a turkey, they got the fixings, but they also got a box of food for the rest of the week. We ended up giving away 2,700, and people were still, we had to turn people away at some point. But this year we're doing it again. We're planning for 2,700, but realistically, I think 3,000 is going to be enough. And so we do a lot of that. We do backpack giveaways. We do haircuts for folks. We do a health fair. We just did a career fair trying to help businesses recruit folks. So we do a lot of those community events, and people really do listen. We do, and with technology, obviously it's a little bit different too. So we do Facebook outreach, we do mail outreach, the snail mail outreach, constant contact. We do all of the social media tools that we have. We use them, but literally I'm out talking to people all the time, and folks really appreciate that. And so I've been able to kind of weave myself into the community. Plus I was a teacher in the city of Baldwin Park for about 3 years. So that community for sure knows me. My kindergarten students are 25 and 26. So I still keep in touch with them on Facebook. One of them, I have to brag because this is a teacher's dream, is one of my students called. He went to Arizona State and became a teacher. He's a teacher in Arizona, and he wanted me to do a Zoom for his classroom because now he's 25, and then he introduced me as his kindergarten teacher, and the kids are like, well, how old are you? Which I was really flattered, by the way, because I was like, not old enough to be his kindergarten teacher, but the kids were like, what? You were his kindergarten teacher? And he said, the reason I am a teacher today is because she inspired me to be a teacher. He was a 5th grade teacher. And so that's a teacher's dream. And he reached out to me, but how many hundreds of kids did I touch while I was a teacher? In that same way where they were inspired by something that I said or something that I did, for them to be better, for themselves. And as a legislator, I can, affect, as a teacher, I was able to affect 30 kids per class times, you do the math, times 16, right? About 500 kids, right? As a legislator, how many kids can I support or can I affect, or how many families can I make a difference for now that I'm in the legislature? So I always go into the district thinking that this could be my father, this could be my mother. My parents, I told you my story about us being immigrants. My parents don't speak English. So I'm blessed to be able to speak both languages. So I'm on, whether it's in English or Spanish, but when I'm in a community event, I don't turn anybody away because that's my dad, that's my mom. That could have been me when I was, that age. I know we didn't get it too much into my story, but I didn't speak the language when I came to the country. And when I wanted to go to college, and this is I tell this story and a lot of people always line up to talk to me about it. But when I was in high school, and it wasn't that long ago, look at me, I'm amazing. Those kids didn't think I was a kindergarten teacher 20 years ago. The counselor literally told me, honey, you're just going to go get pregnant. Why would you want to go to college? Right. So he decided for me what I was to become. And because I don't know, maybe because I was an immigrant, maybe because I didn't speak the language really well, maybe because I was a woman, I'll never know. But the reality is that I want to use this platform to be able to tell those kids, and those, not just kids, because there's a lot of adults that still have that stigma in their heads that they can't do more, to be able to tell my story. I get, and Taylor can tell you, I get at least a half a dozen people always when I speak in line trying to take a picture or trying to talk to me because they say, I was one of you, or that happened to me. And I speak to a lot of colleges and universities, and I'm mentoring literally like 8 college students right now. I meet on a regular basis because I always tell them, call me. And when they call me and they get a response and we meet via Zoom on a monthly basis, they're shocked. They're like, you're actually meeting with me? It's not your staff. I'm like, no. I promised that I was going to help you one way or another. And so that has been literally, I think, the secret to my success, if you want to call it that, is that I talk to the community and I connect with the community, both because I'm an immigrant and a female and poor. I mean, we can do a whole list of all of these things, but I want to also add that my ego goal, and Taylor and Minnie, my chief of staff, are working on that. I want to EGO goal is to do the commencement speech at Belmont High School, where I graduated from, to tell those kids there that somebody there decided that I was not good enough for college for whatever reason, but he decided that I was not good enough for college. But I have an Associates of Arts degree from East Los Angeles College. I have a business degree from Azusa Pacific University, and I have a master's degree in education from Azusa Pacific University. But more than anything, I have this office in that wide building in the middle of Sacramento that I don't think he even thought I was capable of college, let alone to have an office in Sacramento and be a legislator affecting so many people and hopefully affecting them in a positive way.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're so inspiring. Your story is so inspiring. And obviously you've got such a passion to help people. I mean, how did you, I'm going to try to sneak 2 little questions in here. One, how did you end up in public office? So obviously you were so passionate about being a teacher, but eventually you decided to run for school board and then eventually assembly. But what was it about public office that spoke to you?
Actually, this is my 24th year in office. If you're doing math, I was 12. I joke about that all the time. This is my 24th year in office. I started on a water board, and I did not have a degree then. I didn't necessarily say, hey, this is where I want to be. I live in Baldwin Park. Baldwin Park is an EPA Superfund site. It's the kind of the contamination of the San Gabriel Valley is an EPA Superfund site. And I was disgusted with the fact that nothing was happening. And so I would complain. One of my friends was like, well, what are you going to do about it? I was like, I don't know. Most of us can complain and really not do anything about it. But that year, the 3 seats on the water board became available. And I was like, well, I'm going to do this, right? And not having any idea what I was getting myself into, the amount of work that it takes to become an elected person, or the amount of money, to be quite frank with you. My friend just gave me a list and said, go knock on doors. So I started knocking on doors, telling people, hey, I want to run for the water board because, there's some contamination. I want to help clean up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that started me on a path. And when I was on the water board, I was blind to what politics were at that time, but I knew that I was there for a reason. So it was this really tiny water board called Valley County Water Board that serves part of Baldwin Park, a little bit of West Covina, and the city of Irwindale. In terms of size, we're really puny. And I make that a point because we were suing Aerojet. Aerojet was found to be responsible for the contamination in my area. So being naive is amazing. So I go to our attorneys and I'm like, well, let's sue Aerojet. And they're like, what do you mean sue them? We don't have that kind of money. I was like, I don't know what kind of money we need, but if they contaminated the water, they should be able to clean it. And so they were basically thinking I was insane because I wanted to sue Aerojet. And so I said, well, If we don't do it, then we'll never know what happens. So we ended up filing a lawsuit against Aerojet, and they ended up settling with us for $30 million. We built a treatment facility in Baldwin Park to clean up that water. But what happened was, though, because we sued them, everybody else went, what? You can sue them? And so Aerojet was sued, and there was 9 other, they call them RPs, responsible parties. They sued Aerojet along with 9 other organizations that they felt were responsible for the contamination. And they were able to get lifetime money to be able to clean that water, not just for that being, but forever and ever and ever, right? And so for me, even though it doesn't have Blanca Rubio necessarily on that, I was able to begin what I think was the most comprehensive cleanup in my area, right? And we obviously leveraged the money from EPA to do all of these things. So I feel that I was like so naive that I thought I could sue them, that everybody was like, what? We can do this? And so once we did it, it affected that change, if you will. And so that really gave me, honestly, that's why I think I am who I am today, is because I think about it and I go, if I have the guts enough to sue this Aerojet, then there's nothing I can't do, right? And my staff is like, really? But if you don't try, my mom always says, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And with Aerojet, we asked and they gave us money. So how much more can I get then? You keep asking. And so that started me in politics. I spent 8 years on the water board. Then I got on my AA, then went to Azusa Pacific University and got a business degree. And I was working in human resources at the school district during a teacher shortage in 2000. My boss was like, okay, you can do this. You have the kind of the empathy and all of that. And I was like, I've never even played school when I was a kid. Why would I become a teacher? And so she was like, look, right now, all they need is a degree and a pulse. And you have both, right? And even though it was a business degree, what I had to do, I had to go back to school. I was blessed enough to go to Azusa Pacific University, where the master teacher was retiring, and she was like, don't you worry, I'll take care of you. So the traditional way of getting a credential is you go to school, then you do the student teaching on your own, kind of an internship. Because of the teacher shortage, I was thrown I was in my human resources office on Friday, and on Monday I started teaching, but with a lot of support, because I had never wanted to be a teacher. Like I said, I didn't even play school when I was a kid. My master teacher was there with me for 3 solid months, and I became an amazing teacher because of her, passionate obviously about what the education in that community, because that community reflects me in Baldwin Park. Then there was the class size reduction was in effect, where there was 20 or less kids in classrooms from kindergarten to 3rd grade. It was a special program that cost obviously a lot of money. Our school board decided that they were going to eliminate the program. So of course I was like, well, I went to speak and say, we can't do this. It's detrimental to our young kids, especially those that don't speak the language. And they were going to do it anyway. So I was like, all right, well, you're not listening to me this way. I'm going to run for the board. So I ran for school board in Baldwin Park. So I had a few things happen. I did win. I had to quit my job in Baldwin Park because it was a conflict of interest at the time, now to teach in the district that I'm a board member of. So I had to go find another job. I ended up in Fontana Unified, which was an amazing community as well, just as much need as Baldwin Park. So I felt at home, and I was able to help as many kids there as I could in Baldwin Park. So I spent a big chunk of time on the school board while I was teaching. And, eventually the assembly seat became available due to term limits. So I decided, and if there's ladies listening out there, let me tell you, I read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. Again, how you feel about anything to do with Facebook, completely irrelevant for this conversation. She wrote this book, and in the book, what really spoke to me is that women, when we are presented with an opportunity, right? When we're presented with an opportunity, most females tend to make a list of the reasons why not. Why not? I was a single mom. I had at the time a 7 and 8-year-old, school age kids. I was teaching full time. I was not the party favorite. I was not, to be quite honest, not None of the local electeds gave me their support. I had to do this on my own. But women tend to write a list of the reasons why not. I didn't have the support. I didn't this. I didn't that. I didn't. So I had this whole list. After I read Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg talks about, no, talk about the reasons why you should. And so I completely changed my mentality and started listing all the reasons why I should. It turns out I really belong in this seat, because of my passion, but the qualifications, we do so much as females, and I know males do too, so no disrespect to the males, but mainly the women are the nurturers of the family. But we do PTA meetings, we do Little League, we do, we're in charge of the snacks and all of that. We forget the network we already have because we've done all of those things, and we discount it as, oh, that's just something that I do, as opposed to that is an asset. And that's what can get me to the next level because I have all of those connections. When I ran, the moms in my district in Baldwin Park were coming over. They didn't speak English. And they're like, maestra in Spanish, teacher, I can't knock on doors and talk to people, but I can bring you food. I can clean your office. I can bring you water. The folks in Fontana, and Fontana's about 40-minute drive with traffic, 45 minutes. Those moms and those teachers, my colleagues in Fontana, were driving to my district on the weekends to help me knock on doors. The moms, again, dropping off all they could afford was one case of water, but they would drive from Fontana, drop the case of water, help me clean up the office, and then they would go home. And those relationships you don't get by just being idle. Those relationships you earn. We as females earn those relationships because we do the same for our female friends and male friends. We support them when they need somebody pick up their kid. Okay, I can pick them up. Or when you need somebody to stand in for you at whatever event. We have those relationships already in place. But as females, we don't look at those relationships as assets to get us to politics, for example. We think of them as personal relationships. Well, ladies, let me tell you, those relationships are political relationships because nobody knows the community better than those moms that run the Little League snack bar. Those moms can do it. Those dads can do it. And so when I read that book, I was like, no, I can do this. And it was, trust and believe, it was the most difficult thing I have ever done, especially the raising money. My next class will be about how to raise money. But when we go and try to do something, we can be our worst enemies, our own worst enemies, because we talk ourselves out of this. And guess what? It does nobody any good. My opponent, the front runner, could not do half of the job that I've done for my community. And I can tell you that with 100% certainty. The activity, the amount of activities that I do, the amount of bills, and my staff will tell you, it takes 6 of them to keep up with me. And one day we're running, when it was pre-pandemic, we're waiting for the elevator. I'm like, forget the elevator, let's go. So I'm running up the stairs and they're like, boss, wait up. Yeah, they're exhausted. And they're like, and you're wearing heels and you're running up those stairs, right? Men too, but women do what needs to be done to get things done. There's it really is.
Well, as a mom, you're speaking to me, and I know as women all over the country who will listen to this, you're speaking to them, and I do feel like there's been a change that more women are stepping up and deciding they can do it, but it's because of voices like yours, frankly, that they're hearing that, and you're telling them that they can do it, and therefore they're doing it. So I want to thank you for that. And before I lose you, I have to at least acknowledge there's another reason that you are historic, which is that your sister, you are the first one of 2 sisters to serve in the California legislature. She was elected after you to the Senate, and I wanted to acknowledge that and just ask you how amazing is it to be serving alongside your sister?
Well, first and foremost, just the fact that we were undocumented and deported as kids, that in itself, I'm the first legislator to sit in the legislature that has been deported. My sister has been the second one. And I always do that because, there's still sibling rivalry. And I was the first sister, just FYI. Right. And but to have her there, again, first, the historic nature of us being undocumented and deported, but to never have 2 sisters serve in the legislature was like unreal. People mistake and say concurrently. No, we're not talking concurrent. We're talking ever. And the reason is because there has been 4,500 male legislators in the history of California, and there's 178 women that have been in the legislature in California. So just the numbers itself, it's kind of doesn't lend itself for sisters, but it was amazing. And my dad, I speak of my dad and my mom, being in and out of the country. When my sister was elected and we were being sworn in, first I was upset because both swearing-ins were at noon, and one's in the Senate, one's in the Assembly. And I was like, Mom, Dad, where are you going? And they're like, well, we already did you. We're going to go with her today. I was like really upset because I was like, well, that's not fair. But we're walking to the Capitol, and it was dark, and the Capitol is illuminated. And my dad looks up, and with tears in his eyes, he says, I never imagined, in Spanish, of course, because he doesn't speak English, I never imagined being in Sacramento, let alone for these reasons. And he was so moved, and he was just like, my two daughters are sitting members of this 5th largest economy in the world. Of course, he didn't say that, but he, that's what he meant. But for him, it was just so emotional. And for me, it was like, wow, it's so cool. And so the bad parts about it is they call me Senator Blanca Rubio, or they call her assembly member. They confuse us all the time. Even this is her 3rd year, even now. But you know what the most amazing thing is? That I have a partner, a true partner in the Senate. And I don't want to give away too many of our secrets, but you and your siblings have this. I can guarantee it. When you look at each other and you know exactly what you're thinking and what you're talking. So without even having to say anything to her, I know exactly what's going on. And people are like, stop that. I said, what? We didn't do anything, but we know you talk to each other with your eyes. Stop it, because they know that we're plotting, right? Because we've known each other. We're siblings. Siblings have that extra connection, right? And so it's really been amazing. And to be able to quite frankly, rest once in a while, because she overlaps my district. And so people will be like, oh my God, you're everywhere. I saw you in this city. And I'm thinking, oh, of course, anything for my community. And I'm like, that's not my city, that's Susan's city, right? But our social media is crazy, because between her social media and my social media, people think we're, there's only one. And so we're at 10 different events in one day. And so that kind of helps, because I'm like, okay, sister, I'm sitting this one out. It's all you today. Or she'll be like, okay, I'm not going to this. You go to that. So we have a representative, a Rubio representative, and it helps us with the community. But more than that, to be able to say that I have her, and we did live together for 2 years. We were roommates. She finally moved out, but my kids are in Sacramento, by the way. But my kids were able to be with their aunt for 2 years on a daily basis, 4 days a week anyway. And so we were able to support each other then. We support each other legislatively. And again, and I joke and I tell people this, and I can still beat her up. So if she doesn't do what I say, I can beat her up, or I can tell my mom and dad to help out with that. And so, we use it for fun, but it's really, really amazing. I have an automatic, how it works on both houses in the Senate and the Assembly. When we swap bills, we need to find what we call a floor manager. In the Assembly and the Senate, we call it a jockey. So it's an automatic jockey. If I need somebody, I'm like, sister, you're doing this. Even if she doesn't want to, I'm like, oh, no, you're doing this. Or the same the other way. We try to spread the love, and we do find other floor managers depending on the issue. But when we're in that bind, I'm like, you're doing this, okay? And she's like, all right, I'll do it. And so we have, the bond as sisters, but respect for each other as legislators. And, quite frankly, we don't always agree, but at least I know I can trust her opinion and she can trust mine.
Love it. Well, you're lucky to have each other, and the community's lucky to have both of you. So I so appreciate you spending some time with us today, getting to know you, and just thank you for the work that you're doing in this really important time, and the amazingly inspirational voice that you're giving to so many women and Latinas and others around the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Again, I can do part 2 with the fundraising bit the next time.
Take you up on that next time. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to An Honorable Profession. Please subscribe to hear more amazing leaders, and keep asking your elected officials to be honorable. Boots Road Group produces podcast. I'm Ryan Coonerty, and because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.